I'm going to be doing a first chapter reading of my first book. I'm doing it through a text to speech reader because I'm not very good at reading aloud myself. But I did go through this already and make sure that it was good for this to be read through and all that fun stuff. So it should sound pretty okay. I'm not sure about the speed, and I will warn you now, this is a very loud program, so don't have your volume turned up too loudly. And yeah, I'm going to be working on some things while this reads out. Obviously, feel free to chat with me and whatnot. Yeah, I know. Dashboard, yes. Okay, so sorry guys, I'm just trying to make sure everything's working here. Because while I'm working, I'm not going to be able to see all of this stuff. So what's going to happen? I'm just going to start this and go from there. So yeah, so this is my first book, The Last Universal Guide Origins. I guess I should give a bit of a description. So basically, this is a fantasy science fiction series. This one in particular, well, this branch of it is a romance novel. At least it starts out like one, and like pretty much that thing kind of carries through this particular part of the series, but it's not like all there is to it. I guess it is central to a lot of things though, so I will say that. But yeah, so this is basically this character's introduction to this world, which is supposed to be a world filled with like mythological creatures and like there are like gods and stuff, but that was like way later. But yeah, this is basically her like getting like kind of like brought into it and shown what's going on. It's basically like I'm basically trying to like weave a bit of the mythological into like real life, and like slowly it gets more and more kind of idea. I don't know. Anyway, so this is where I've started on this. So it's supposed to be like a parallel universe to ours kind of thing. So same kind of like human history pretty much, but then there's like mythological creatures and stuff mixed into kind of idea. Anyway, so I'm gonna get this going. Let's just see here. Okay, so I don't really need... No, that's fine. Okay. So I am going to start this up. And then we're going to go here. So I'm going to go up here. So yeah. So this is called The Last Universal Guide Origins, once again, and it's by me. My name is, my author name is R.J. Myers, or Rebecca Myers. The Myers part is spelled M-E-I-J-E-R-S, and this is available on Amazon and Kindle currently. I am currently looking for a literary agent to, get it out there to a wider audience in a sense, because obviously, aside from what I'm doing right now, I can't really afford advertising. So, I'm just doing what I can kind of thing. Alright, so, and if you're hearing any weird sounds, my fiance is working out, like, just in front of me. We live in a small apartment, so there's not a lot of space for this kind of stuff.
Nope.
So yeah, if you hear anything weird, that's what that is. Alright, let's get to this. Now, oh, and I should also... This has a trigger warning with it, because I do stay very close to real life in a lot of what I write, and the chosen story that I have, like the story the way I've chosen to tell this story, does not start out in the most pleasant way. In fact, it's not pleasant at all, but that's because I kind of like, I don't believe in like not drawing attention to things that are obviously not okay in the world. I guess I'm kind of like one of those social activist kind of people. But yeah, it's more of a like, this isn't okay, why is it going on kind of thing, kind of idea. That was what I was trying to say for that kind of part. Anyway, I know that may not be my place, but at the same time I want to help with that stuff, so it just kind of seemed, appropriate to put it in my writing. So whether or not it's my place or not, I'm someone who's disabled, I'm, part of the LGBT community, and I was born, female, I guess would be the best way to put it. So yeah, I'm, aside from my skin color, which is obviously white, I have my own struggles and stuff, but I don't have like that particular one. But I still, it's my thought of like, I shouldn't not include that just because of that, because that wouldn't be right in my eyes, I guess. I don't know. I just hope you guys get the idea. I'm not trying to like be like discriminatory or mean or anything like that. It's really like supposed to be close to real life. That's the point. So I hope that you guys can understand that. That's why I'm explaining it now. And that's why I'm giving this warning, because it is very close to real life for a lot of people and not in a great way. There is like, I do comment on like abuse, I do comment on like bad conditions in certain places, I do comment on like social struggles with addiction, struggles with like, there's a teen pregnancy thing and a overdose thing. So yeah, that's not, I don't remember if that part's in this first chapter. That might be later. But at least for this part, I would say, like, if you've suffered any kind of neglect, abuse, especially as a child, this might be triggering. And also, if you've ever lived in, like, certain conditions in your life, like, poor conditions, things like that, where, like, in poverty, it might be triggering in that way as well. So, just to warn you, I'm not sure what else to warn about, but that's all I can think of for now. I hope that's enough. And for those of you who have stayed with me and still want to listen, well, here we go. All right.
Now though Chapter 1. Wandering the halls, the young woman wondered if she could make it the last 6.5 months till graduation. She could swear her schoolmates would kill her in the meantime if she could not keep running. Now though the young woman knew her best bet was to either escape into the small crowd outside or else keep running in the halls till the bell rang at the end of lunch. After walking over to the other end of the hallway without seeing anyone, she decided to head to the library. It was one of the few places her schoolmates could not bother her as much, though she had read every book she could in there by the end of the first month that year. She knew the librarian, Mr. Gores, would probably glare at her, but she did not care at that point. All she wanted was to rest for a bit.
Okay, I'm just going to pause for a moment, just so you guys know. I'm going to be working on something else, so you may hear some typing. I hope it's not too loud, but yeah, I'm just going to do my typing and restart this.
All she wanted was to rest for a bit because they were dissecting sheep's eyeballs in her physics class during the next period. When she entered the space, she felt the tension rise as everyone noticed her. Instead of focusing on this though, she beelined for the free computer she had spotted. The young woman sat in the small uncomfortable dark blue chair that were the standard there. After
Oh, and some things may not be pronounced quite correctly. That is one thing I cannot help. So, unfortunately, some of the names are not pronounced correctly because of the names that I've used. And in some cases, some of the wording sounds a little strange. So, unfortunately, this was like the best e-reader I could find for what I was looking for, pretty much. Anyway.
Also tell them that it sometimes says dot instead of what.
Yeah, sometimes it says dot instead of like going to the next sentence. I don't know why. So, yeah, be prepared for that weirdness. Anyway.
After logging in and getting to where she wanted on the internet, the young woman began to check on several things. Even though almost everyone in the town went nowhere near her thanks to her parents. She had managed to find employment at a small gas station near the edge of the municipality. It was the only place of employment run by someone not born in the town. Instead, it was run by a Native American man from a reserve called Black Moose about an hour from the town. She had been working there since she was 14 and was now checking on her emails. After noticing there was nothing new in her inbox, she felt a twinge of worry as she thought about the applications she had just finished sending out the previous week. The young woman had applied to as many universities and colleges as possible, and she had even made submissions for every applicable grant, bursary, and scholarship she could. It had been a lot of work, but she was glad most of them still had paper forms for this process. It was not long till she heard the bell and had to get up along with everyone else. She headed for her class and had to dodge being tripped 4 times. Upon entering the room, she almost ran into her teacher, who was a rather big, almost bald man with a large gray mustache. He was currently yelling at a boy who had climbed up onto the counter by the far wall to get something. "I told you to use the ladder, Calvin. Get down from there. What if the principal comes in?" the teacher stated loudly as he gestured in an irritated manner. Excuse me, Mr. Henderson, the young woman said from behind the man who had her kitty corner against the entryway. Oh, sorry Cynthia, Mr. Henderson responded as he stepped forward. Thanks, Cynthia said as she walked swiftly over to her seat. Mr. Henderson was one of the few nice teachers at her school. There were only 2 others and one of the vice principals hated her. Cynthia had nearly gotten her son arrested for sexually assaulting someone. The woman had almost threatened her with gang rape or having her framed for something if she did not agree to not go to the cops. About a week after this though, she got a call from her classmate's father.
This is just
they told her they were dropping the charges cause apparently honestly, she had walked in on some weird consensual sexual role play she had misinterpreted. The 2 had been too embarrassed to admit to it, but then they got caught doing it again by the girl's mother and she had told his mother. Cynthia had never been so glad to hear about a weird sexual kink of 2 of her classmates. She was also thankful yet kind of annoyed that she had left at the beginning. Even though it was strange, she knew if she had stayed longer, she probably would have figured things out and not made a big deal out of it. Cynthia knew how she would feel though if someone walked in on her doing that sort of thing. The young woman had her own experiences with people walking in on her since she had dated several teenage boys and 2 teenage girls by this point. They had all been from Black Moose and she had been staying there on weekends since the age of 11 due to her home life. She had met them first at the gas station when she started going there to get away from her home. Now though, Black Moose was Cynthia's sanctuary and safe place to go when things were especially turbulent at home. She had spent even more time there during this rough period and was almost tempted to move to the reserve if it weren't for the abysmal job prospects there.
Sorry, Mafia.
Now though she had hope in other places, however it had not been easy after what happened with the principal's son. Even though it was all a misunderstanding, the vice principal never took her side on anything since then. It had made her life very difficult, especially after word got around about what was going on and what had happened. It had made things quite awkward for everyone at the school. Now though, Cynthia took her seat and wondered if this was something she could do alone. To her relief, it was 2 to a tray. She got one to herself, which was handed to her last. She knew Mr. Henderson had to appear not to favor her, obviously. Cynthia worked as quickly as possible and was glad it was Friday as she could go home, quickly pack her clothes and stay in Black Moose with her friends.
Sorry guys, my
She had plans to sleep over.
What?
She had plans to sleep over at one of her friends' houses that night and wondered if she could stay till Monday morning. It always depended on what time the deliveries came in for the store that day. Cynthia knew it would be confirmed by the time she showed up for her shift. Dissecting the sheep's eyeball was more slimy than anything else. Cynthia was glad for the gloves. She quickly found all the components and then she had Mr. Henderson come over and check her tray. Cynthia named everything correctly but also apologized for squishing the retina. The lens of the sheep's eye had gotten lodged in it and she had to dig it out. That's all right, Cynthia. You can bring this up to the front now and go get cleaned up, Mr. Henderson told her as he nodded towards his desk. After getting cleaned up, Cynthia wrote in a book of stories she was working on. The young woman planned on trying several ways to make money while she was in high school and post-secondary education. It took Cynthia a while to write everything as she had several stories going and could not figure out which one to focus on. She brought a different one each day and even carried a dictionary with her. The one Cynthia was currently working on was a steampunk saga about air pirates that worked for the government. The rest of Cynthia's day was filled with her classmates behind her in philosophy class pelting her with pencil shavings which stuck in her long hair, which was dyed purple. She knew better than to take them out as they would throw worse and worse things at her. At the end of the day, Cynthia rushed home and shook the pencil shavings out of her tresses along the way. Upon arriving home, the young woman paused in slight apprehension. She could hear her mother moving around in the house. Cynthia stood on the threshold and counted out 5 minutes as she waited at the entryway, but the noises did not change enough for her to decipher anything. The young woman then slowly opened the door and stepped lightly into the house. Doing her best to quietly close the door, Cynthia felt the hairs on the back of her neck prickle up. The young woman then took off her outer clothing and tried to keep the rustling down, but she flinched when the metal coat hangers rattled. Pausing for an interval, Cynthia thought she was fine, then her mother walked in from the living room. "When did you get here?" the older woman asked in an irritated tone. "Just now. Do you need anything?" Cynthia asked politely as she pondered at her mother's odd display of sobriety. "When was the last time you got the mail?" the woman inquired in a clearly angry manner. Cynthia felt the bottom drop out of her stomach and realized one of the checks had been due 2 days ago. She swallowed hard, wondering if her mother would make her go and cash the check with her as punishment. "Well, what are you standing there for? Go and get the fucking mail." "Useless little," the woman said in an agitated tone, but then grumbled out the last part as she turned away. Cynthia quickly dashed around and grabbed the key from the shelf by the door. She did not even bother to put her coat back on before walking out into the cold December weather and heading for the mailbox at the end of the driveway. Shoving her hand into the almost overfull standard black metal box, Cynthia felt a strangely textured envelope. She pulled everything out at once and cursed a little as a few items fell into the slush at her feet. The young woman picked everything up quickly, then headed inside of the house. "Give me those," her mother said to her vehemently as she made to snatch the pile in the young woman's arms. "'Kay," Cynthia answered as she half thrust the pile at the woman. The young woman then walked away towards her room, which was at the back of the house. Cynthia quickly walked down to her bedroom to the sounds of her mother haphazardly ripping open the mail. The young woman ignored this though and entered her room to get what she needed for the weekend. After emptying what she would not need, she rummaged around in her dresser for what she would. Cynthia then moved to the bathroom to gather the last of her things when she nearly collided with her mom, who now had a drink that smelled strongly of vodka in her hand. "And where the fuck do you think you're going?" the woman inquired in a voice full of venom. To my friend's house. I'm going to my friend's house for the weekend," Cynthia explained in a reluctant tone. "Heh, since when does this useless little human have friends?" the woman stated in a mocking manner as she circled around Cynthia. "I've had them for a while," Cynthia informed her mother as she tried not to sound shaky. "My useless little offspring, who can't even do dishes right or cook." "You want me to believe you have friends," the woman said sarcastically as she chuckled slightly. "Yes, I do," Cynthia answered steadily as her mother glared at her. "And if you'll excuse me, I need to get going," the young woman told her mother as she made to walk out to the entryway. Cynthia's mother had other ideas though, as she planted herself squarely in front of the doorway. "Did I say you could leave?" the woman questioned in a cruel voice as the young woman stood there hesitantly. "Mom, we both know I'm heading out that door." "And I'll see you Monday," Cynthia told her mom in a slightly trembling voice. "Oh, will you? Or maybe, you'll come home and find the locks changed. And all your stuff strewn out on the lawn," the woman threatened in a low and menacing tone. "I know, you'd never do that, Mom. You know why? Because even if you're angry at me now, you're a better person than that. Besides, you're not gonna have any time to watch your shows if you wait around here talking with me," Cynthia pointed out in a calm voice as she glanced up at the ceiling briefly. "TCH, and you know I'm not," the woman said as she jabbed Cynthia in the chest sharply.
Sometimes it doesn't say certain things
"But
properly.
You're right, I don't have the time to do this with you, nor do I want to anyway," the woman admitted in an annoyed tone as she turned away from her daughter. "I do expect you to deal with this though," she said, handing Cynthia a small sealed envelope. Cynthia took the letter with a confused look on her face as her mother suppressed a knowing and mean grin. The young woman opened it slowly and began to read the contents as she headed to the front closet to get her coat. Dear Mrs. Benson and Miss Benson, this letter is to invite you to the annual Christmas party held for the town's citizens at my mansion. If you reply to this letter, it is expected for both of you to attend the evening's festivities. It will be held on the 24th of December and arrival time is set for 4 in the evening. Please reply to this letter by phone no later than the 17th of December at 5 o'clock. The number we can be reached at is 807-613-8922 and we ask that you state your name at the beginning of the call. We look forward to seeing the both of you there and hope that your year has been good. Yours sincerely, Elias Maria Weisenfeld. Cynthia was thrown off by the suddenness of having to deal with the letter as well as get to work for the evening. Instead of calling right away as they had not had a home phone since she was 11, the young woman instead got her coat on and headed out the door. On her way to work, Cynthia kept fiddling with the letter which she had stuffed in her pocket for safekeeping. She wondered why her mother had given the envelope to her like that. Usually the woman took care of those things because it meant she could get free drinks all evening. Cynthia did have an idea why though, as her mother had gotten plastered at last year's festivities and had to be dragged out by her and one of the waiters. That had been one of her worst walks home, as her house was a 15-minute walk from the mansion even in good weather. That night though, the sidewalks were unplowed and her mother had worn heels to the party even though they had no vehicle to get home in. After dumping her mother into her bed, the young woman had to throw out her dress because it had gotten torn and filthy during the long walk home. After that, Cynthia promised herself to keep a closer eye on her mother. Now though Cynthia just needed to get work over with, then she could go to her friends and settle down for the weekend. Hey Cynthia, everything okay today? Her boss asked her as she entered through the back door. Nope, but I'll deal with it anyway, Masque, Cynthia replied like usual as she headed for the lockers where their stuff was kept. You heading my way tonight then? A young man's voice queried hopefully as he came out from behind a stack of pallets by the far wall. Nope, I was gonna ask your dad to drop me off at Ayami's place actually. She invited me to stay this weekend, Cynthia replied with a small smile as the young man walked over to them. You know you're always welcome at our house. Which reminds me, did you have enough time to think about Christmas yet? He reminded Cynthia in a hinting tone. Cynthia hesitated as she let a long audible breath out of her nose. There's just one problem with that, Popwe, the young woman answered, looking annoyed as she opened her locker. And that is? Popwe inquired in an interested tone as he leaned against the wall next to Cynthia. This, Cynthia responded, sounding worried as she grabbed the invitation from her pocket and handed it to Popwe. Didn't you say you were positive they weren't inviting you this year? Popwe brought forward in a confused tone as he glanced down at the letter. I thought so too, Cynthia commented as she began shoving stuff into her locker. Especially after my mom took out half the buffet when she fell over, the young woman put forward as Popwe tried not to chuckle. Cynthia gave him an exasperated look before retrieving her nametag from the top shelf of the locker. I even saw the look on the host's face when it happened, the young woman stated in a concerned tone as she pulled on her work shirt over her hoodie. Didn't you say he looked pissed and he started yelling at the wait staff? Popwe inquired as he leaned down a little and handed her back the letter. Yep, I couldn't hear what he said over the crowd cause he was on the opposite side of the hall. I heard the last part where he said I don't ever wanna see, while looking right at me and my mom. That butler of his stopped him from saying the last part though, Cynthia explained, and she rearranged her clothing so it wasn't bunched up. After what had happened that night, Cynthia sent them a lengthy letter of apology. She had hoped it would at least redeem them a little, as her classmates had gotten even worse after this incident. The young woman had never received a response unfortunately, so she had been stuck wondering all year if they would be invited back. Want me to get your hair? You still got some stuck over, Popwe said as he made to pull Cynthia's hair out of her shirt. Stupid too big hoodie. Then again, it's better than nothing, Cynthia blurted out, sounding mildly fed up. Considering my cousin gave it to you. I'm surprised you haven't taken more of the clothes we've offered you, Popwe brought forward in a puzzled tone. Please, you guys have it hard enough there as it is. You don't need some white girl coming along and messing it all up, Cynthia pointed out in a slightly guilty voice. Hey, our home is your home. We've said that since the beginning, Popwe reminded Cynthia as he followed her to the front of the store. And as you know, not everyone there feels that way. And no offense to you, but I'd rather not get on the wrong side of Kizak and her little group if that's all right with you, Cynthia explained as she rolled her eyes in exasperation. Oh please, they're not even that bad. It's not like any of them have the skills to do much damage to you after all, Popwe told Cynthia, sounding dismissive as she clocked in behind the front register. That may be so, but she's still your ex. And she didn't care for me much even before you two dated, Cynthia brought up as she put her stamp card into its proper slot. You know she's all talk. If you'd just let us feed ya up a bit more, you'd be able to take her out any day. I mean, you handled Mukita pretty well when I got into that fight with him and Wutani, Popwe recalled as they headed for the back room again. That was only because I was able to grab him from behind, and don't forget that Peachy and Danis showed up shortly after that, Cynthia put forward as they went over to begin taking inventory. Yeah, I remember that. Remember the look on Wutani's face when Peachy showed up though? Went from grinning to pale as a ghost, Popwe stated with an ironic little laugh. Well, we should probably get to counting, Cynthia brought up as she stared across the length of all the pallets. True enough, Popwe replied simply, then he headed to grab the clipboards. They spent the rest of the evening counting through all the overstock in the back as the sound of the occasional customer could be heard. Hey, it's time to get going you guys, Masque told them as he poked his head into the back. "'Kay Dad. We just finished up to here," Popwe told Masque as he showed his father to the far end of the pallets. "Good, we should be able to finish in time then." "Does Ayami's have an alarm clock at her place?" Masque questioned as he walked through the back to his desk. "Not sure. I know her mom had one last I checked, but I don't think it works," Cynthia informed them, sounding worried. "Want another wake-up call from me?" Popwe suggested in a hopeful tone. "As much as I enjoy your wake-up calls, Popwe, I think something quieter would be good this time," Cynthia responded in a sarcastic manner. The last time Popwe had woken Cynthia up, he had borrowed a neighbor's ladder and knocked on the second-story bedroom of her friend's house. He had been knocking in the tune for Pop Goes the Weasel and had unfortunately gotten the parents' room by mistake. After being yelled at for disturbing the peace and being reckless, Masque was called, and Popwe would have been grounded if he was not already an adult. They also told him to just use the doorbell till someone answered next time, even if it did annoy them. "It's not like I'm gonna do something like that again. I learned my lessons, thanks," Popwe said with a rueful smile. "Either way, I'll just go to bed early tonight if there isn't one," Cynthia told them reassuringly as she pulled her work shirt off. "How about this, if you don't call by 8, I'll come over and knock. No ladders, no rocks at the window or any other funny stuff," Popwe told Cynthia reassuringly as he began taking off his own work attire. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" Cynthia responded in a skeptical tone as she rolled her eyes. "Promise," Popwe stated in a no-nonsense way. Fine. But I still don't believe you," Cynthia replied in a sing-song way as she walked away from him. At this, Popwe lobbed his shirt at Cynthia, which landed on her shoulder, causing her to pause mid-stride. The young woman lifted the shirt to her nose, took a sniff and then threw it back at the young man. Irish Spring, real appealing, Cynthia told Popwee in a teasing voice as she turned to face him again. Sure, you don't wanna just come to my place? Popwee suggested again with an enticing look in his eyes. Tempting, Cynthia answered with a small nod of her head. But I'm gonna have to say no. After all, I already made plans, the young woman answered in a lofty tone as she looked up at him. Too bad, you don't know what you're missing, Popwee replied, sounding a little cocky. Oh, but I do, and unfortunately for you I'm a person of my word, Cynthia brought forward as Popwee finally closed his locker. You two ready to go yet? Masque asked as he poked his head out of his cubicle. I think so, Dad, Popwee answered as he stepped away from the lockers. Good, let's get going then, it's late, Masque mentioned, sounding disgruntled as he walked back over to his desk. Let's head out to the truck, Popwee stated as he looked over at Cynthia fondly. "'Kay," Cynthia responded with a half shrug. At Ayami's place, Cynthia was greeted by her friend's cousin who was apparently staying there as well. Hey, Cynthia, how ya been? The girl asked as she leaned against the sickly green-colored wall which was peeling. Hey Nichina, I been the usual. How about you? Cynthia asked politely as she hung up her coat on the stand as best as she could. Pretty good, Ayami's is just out in the back. Said she needed to get some cereal from the storage shed, Nichina told Cynthia as she looked down the mostly darkened hallway. Does she need any help? Cynthia inquired as she stuffed her mitts in her coat sleeve. Nah, I think Eshihao went out back with her too. It's only cereal after all, Nichina replied with a shrug as she moved aside so Cynthia could walk down the hall. Did you guys get your power back? Cynthia questioned, sounding concerned as she headed for the kitchen. My end hasn't yet. Just the front half has gotten it back. We're still without, and our generator broke last month, Nichina responded in an annoyed way as she followed after Cynthia. TCH, that sucks. Have they restored it for the community center at least? Cynthia questioned as they entered the kitchen with its plywood countertops and open shelves. Everything in the oddly laid out room looked old and about to fall apart. Cynthia would often have to avoid exposed wiring and buckets of water from leaky roofs. The stove was missing a burner and none of the timing mechanisms worked. The fridge was so old it hardly worked and was being held together by bungee cords. The cupboards were only half finished and none of them had doors. Even the drawers were entirely open, and because of this all the sharp knives had to be stored up in an empty can on a top shelf.
Sorry guys.
I think they did on Wednesday last I heard.
There we go.
Lord only knows when it'll go out again, Nichina told her, sounding disgruntled. Are your mom and brother here too then? Cynthia questioned as she began to grab down some of the cans. Yeah, they're in the back room together. And my aunt's at Hokuma's place across the road. I think she said the rest of my cousins are sleeping there or down on Wapaso with my Oamaima and Omosomima. Nichina explained as Cynthia took out a large pot from the lower cabinets. Least that's better than sleeping in a cold house. Do you know if there's any meat in the fridge? Cynthia queried as she began to detangle the bungee cords. I think there should be some deer that was prepped a few days ago. There might just be some chicken as well. My aunt went into town on Monday and I'm not sure if we used it all up yet, Nichina informed Cynthia as Ayami's and Eshihao walked in the back door. Hey Cynthia, when do you get here? Ayami's inquired as she set the cereal boxes on the table.
Sorry, my fiance is watching a very distracting
Just
anime.
a few minutes ago. Your mom said last time I could make stew when I came. Think she'd still be good with it? Cynthia brought up as she helped put the boxes away. No reason why not. She's probably up in her room watching movies on that retro channel again, Ayamis responded as she headed for the front to hang up her coat. How ya been, Esha? How? Anything exciting happening with you? Cynthia questioned as she got out what she would need. I guess you could say that, Esha How answered, then he let out a worried sigh. What's been happening? Cynthia asked as she paused and turned to face the teenager. My girlfriend's pregnant, Esha How told her, sounding reluctant as he glanced around the kitchen. I would say congrats, but I'm guessing that wouldn't be the appropriate response right now, Cynthia stated as Nichina got up to put the kettle on. It's not that, so much as her age, Esha How said in a hesitant manner, clearly feeling terrible. Well, being 15 and pregnant, I can see that, Cynthia agreed as she swayed her head from side to side. That's the problem. Turns out she's been lying to me about her age. I only found out last month she's actually 13, and she came to me last week with the positive test. We haven't even spoken since I broke up with her after finding out how old she actually was, Esha How told Cynthia as she fished the can opener out of a drawer. Well, I can't tell you for sure what to do. The only thing I can say is do what's best for you, or at least try to. I mean, you're only 16, and if she's 13. Are your family or her family prepared to take that on? Though given the circumstances you may not have a choice. Does she know how far along she is, if you don't mind my asking? Cynthia inquired as she opened the first can over the exposed sink. She said she's probably 2 months at this point. I haven't really told my family yet, and I don't think she's told hers, Esha How replied as he held his head in his hands. Then you better get on it, Nichina suggested as she got down the mugs. I know, I just wish there was some way to deal with this on my own, Esha How mentioned in a tone of reluctance. And I say be glad you have people to help you with these things. 'Cause some of us don't and maybe never will, Cynthia pointed out in a wise voice. Esha How let out a long and frustrated sounding sigh at Cynthia's words. I see your point. I guess I should try to at least breach the subject with my mom before things progress any farther, the teenager replied in a concerned tone as he stood up again. Is she around? Cynthia questioned as she resumed cooking. She's next door at Kika's place. Esha and her went over there an hour ago, Esha How told them as he peered down the hallway. Well, I'd say at least wait till I'm done with this, Cynthia told Esha How as she began emptying cans into the pot. After all, it's easier to talk about these things on a full stomach. And I don't think your mom's had my cooking in a while, the young woman stated as the electric kettle clicked. Once Cynthia had finished everything for the evening, including cleaning up most of the downstairs, her and the other girls went up to Ayami's room. They headed up the narrow and very creaky stairs in single file to one of the 2 bedrooms upstairs. All of them had to duck due to the low, sloped ceiling which had clear signs of mold. Cynthia plopped herself down on the pile of mattresses and box springs on the floor as Ayami's flicked on the lamp which was attached to an extension cord. The room had 3 piles of mattresses and box springs in it, as well as 2 half-broken dressers. The only other piece of furniture in the room was a small vanity with some makeup products scattered across it. We should probably just go to sleep since you've got work tomorrow, Ayami suggested as she sat on one of the other piles. It is getting pretty late. Too bad your mom's alarm clock got lost, Cynthia stated, then she let out a weary sigh. It's not a big deal. Not like Pop we would mind waking you up, Ayami stated teasingly as she playfully stuck her tongue out at Cynthia. Oh please, you know we only talk like that as a joke. I really don't have an interest in him that way, Cynthia responded as she lowered her top half onto the mattress. I still don't get why you won't date him just 'cause he's Masque's son, Nichina brought up, sounding puzzled. 'Cause it's a conflict of interest, plus I can't exactly afford to lose my job. Least the rest of the guys I've dated that worked there didn't work there every day, Cynthia put forward as Nichina sat down by her feet. Or are related to your boss, Ayami's brought up in an advising tone. I see your point. Still kind of a waste, don't ya think? I mean, he's been after ya for how long now? Nichina queried as she kicked off her shoes. Christ, since when has he not shown an interest? Been after me since I first showed up at Masque's gas station, I swear, Cynthia answered as she propped herself up on her elbows. Ayami's let out a knowing giggle at this as Cynthia rolled her eyes at her. Anyway, let's get to sleep, she said as she got up and walked over to her dresser. Cynthia spent the weekend as usual playing around with her friends and wondering how Eshahao had made out as she had not seen him since Friday. On her way home from work on Sunday, Cynthia took the invitation out of her pocket for the party. She still had not replied to it, knowing that the people at the mansion probably would not have answered if she called from while she was in Black Moose. Now though she pondered how to deal with it, as her mother had said to do it before Monday morning. For now, Cynthia shoved it back into her coat and wandered up to her front door. She was relieved when she walked in and her mother's boots were not there, and she also noticed the woman had forgotten her cell phone on the small table by the front door. This would give the young woman the time she needed to call the place and sort things out without her mother breathing down her neck. Cynthia took the card she had left in her coat pocket and opened it so she could get the task over with. Hello, this is Cynthia Benson. I'm calling to reply to the invitation you sent for my mother and I, the young woman said after an elderly gentleman answered the phone. Yes, hello Miss Benson. I'm glad to hear you and your mother can attend. Is she there so I can confirm everything with her? The man inquired in a polite tone. Not at the moment. Is it okay if you just give me the details and I'll write them down for her? Cynthia suggested as she sat down in one of the only fully intact kitchen chairs. I can always call your house tomorrow. The gentleman brought forward as he walked into a different room. By any chance could you still leave the details with me just in case? Unfortunately, I'm not sure how busy my mom is, so I can't tell you when it's best to call back, Cynthia lied as she tried to get through the conversation. I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, I'll give you the details, the man agreed, then he let out a small sigh of annoyance. "'Kay, go ahead," Cynthia told him as she walked towards her room still holding the phone. "Both of you are expected to wear formal dress and arrive no later than 5:30. You are to come through the front gates and show the invitation at the door.
50-minute mark, then we're going to call it.
Other than that, we are limiting all adults to 4 alcoholic drinks each this year," the man explained as Cynthia entered her room and almost threw her backpack onto her bed. "Sounds pretty straightforward." "Thank you for inviting us again," Cynthia responded as she sat down on her bed and turned on her table lamp. "You're quite welcome. We look forward to seeing both of you," the gentleman told Cynthia as she laid back on her bed. "I look forward to seeing everyone as well." "Well, I should be going, chores and homework to do and all," Cynthia brought up as she pulled her bag towards her. "All right, goodbye for now," the man replied as he paused in his walking through the mansion. "Bye," Cynthia said, then she hung up the phone. Cynthia was about to put her mother's phone back where she found it when she heard the woman at the door. The young woman hesitated as she heard her mother fumbling with her keys. She felt somewhat relieved that her mother was already high on something, even though she felt terrible to admit it. Instead of waiting for her mother to walk in, Cynthia pulled the door open and said, "Hi Mom. Have a good weekend?" "Oh Cynthia, I didn't know you'd be home," the woman stated in mild surprise as she stepped into the house. You left this by the door by the way," Cynthia said as she handed her mother the cell phone. "And I called and took care of everything," she told her mother as she handed the woman the instructions without the invitation. Cynthia knew better than to trust her mother with the invite, as she had lost them several times before. The woman stared down at the short note, then stuck her flip phone into her back pocket. "TCH, cheapskates," she stated next as she glanced down at the note again, which clearly had the 4-drink limit listed on it. The woman then headed towards the kitchen while completely ignoring Cynthia, which suited her just fine. At school the next day, Cynthia was treated to having someone's lunch being thrown at her in the hallway. Only half got on her, but the half that did contained hot soup, and she got a small burn on her arm from it. The young woman spent the rest of the day wincing every time she had to move her arm and wondered how she'd hide it at work. Everything else went smoothly that day though, as she sat in the back and did the last bit of inventory with Popwi. They were about to go their separate ways for the night when the young man stopped her at the door. "Let me see," Popwi said to Cynthia in a stern tone. Cynthia let out an exasperated sigh at this and then rolled up her sleeve to reveal the burn from that morning. Popwi handled Cynthia's arm gingerly as he examined the burn, which was still an angry red color. "It's not blistered or anything," Cynthia pointed out as Popwi turned her arm over. "No, but you've got enough scars as it is." "Did your mom do this, or was this a school thing?" Popwi inquired in a concerned voice. "One of the asshat girls decided to throw her lunch at me. Just wish she hadn't have brought a thermos full of soup today," Cynthia responded. Then Masque walked in carrying the first aid kit. "Thanks, Dad. Let's patch you up before you leave anyway," Popwi suggested as he went to get the salves they had. "I wish my damn math teacher hadn't confiscated my last jar of that stuff," Cynthia said as Popwi came back with a jar of white gritty looking cream. The young man shooed Cynthia away to wash her arm before he applied the stuff. "Why's that?" he asked her as she turned on the sink. "She said it looked questionable to her and then told me she'd make sure I was arrested by the RCMP if it was," Cynthia answered as she began to wash the burn with lukewarm water. "Ha, when half this town either drinks or pops OxyContin like candy, probably Ritalin too for that matter," Popwi put forward as he organized everything he would need. "I certainly wouldn't put it past them," Cynthia agreed as she took her seat. "'Kay, sorry if this hurts," Popwi told Cynthia with an unenthusiastic expression. "Just get it over with," Cynthia replied as she gripped the chair so Popwi could sterilize the wound with alcohol. The two sat in silence as Popwi slowly dressed the wound for Cynthia, who appeared rather disinterested. "All finished," Popwi stated as he set down the medical tape. "Good," Cynthia responded as she checked over the wrapping job Popwi had done. "One thing's for sure. I'm glad your skills have gotten better," Cynthia brought up as she pulled her sleeve down over her scarred arm. "They were bound to," Popwi pointed out with an ironic and woeful grin. "HMPF, well, I should get going. Rather get back before the evening shift guys finish work at the plant," Cynthia stated as she stood up. "I can always walk you home," Popwi suggested as he began putting everything back into the first aid kit. "And have my mom throw stuff at you again?" "Not happening," Cynthia replied as she headed towards the back door. "All right, well, just be careful, okay," Popwi told Cynthia as he walked her to the exit. "I always try to be," Cynthia reminded Popwi as she paused with her hand on the doorknob. "See ya tomorrow then," Popwi said to Cynthia, then he leaned in to hug her. "Yep, see ya," Cynthia answered as she gave Popwi a quick hug, then she headed out the door. It was Wednesday and Cynthia knew her mother had not yet gone and gotten a dress for the party the following week. So the young woman did what she knew she had to do and left her mom several reminder notes. She knew she'd get yelled at for it, but it was worth it to avoid a worse situation later. Cynthia spent her last few days of school just trying to ignore her schoolmates. The young woman was not in any clubs nor did she do sports, so she was always alone at school. It had made for some very lonely times, but she did not care anymore, as she knew after this year she would not have to see any of them again. Friday was the worst, as someone managed to rip her backpack before Cynthia left that day. Having to carry everything home then to the gas station for her shift made her late for work.
Okay, guys.
What happened to Yat, Pop? We began to ask, but then saw Cynthia's predicament.
Where am I? So I'm like right here. I still have all of this. So yeah. I'll leave it for now. Read another night. I'm gonna get out of this first, so I'm gonna be at a black screen here for a minute. Oops, don't want that up. Sorry guys, I was looking at some other stuff here. Ooh, go away. There we go. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you had a good time. I'll probably finish that up another time. Maybe do like part of chapter 2. I don't know yet. For now, thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time. If you want to find this book, it's again called The Last Universal Guide to Origins. You can find it on Amazon and Kindle. It's a fantasy science fiction romance novel. As I said, it's very, very close to real life stuff, as you can probably tell now. Hence why I've had all that warning stuff at the beginning. Either way, if you stuck around, thanks. And I hope that you will join me again at some point. And if you want to find me, all the stuff up above is everything that you'll need to know. So there's Twitter and Instagram, which is RJMyers90. The Myers part is spelled MEIJERS. As I've said before, my YouTube is also RJ Myers. I also have a TikTok, which is RJ Myers. And then for those of you on YouTube, which I'm going to post this to, so at some point later on, my Twitch is werewolf_Revy. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye!